button now. Let's try this again.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. This is Jared and Jim. It is not aliens. It is the Thursday after the elections. We will not be interrupted. We just did a dry run. We are going to be. We will be live now, uninterrupted, with absolutely no time limit. Although I'm sure we both have one in our minds.
Yep.
So,
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. One of the real interesting things that's happened just this last week, and I don't know his. I didn't write down his name, but there's a guy who has the Area 51 or the Dreamland Little Alien Research Center website. Well, apparently he's done something to cause the FBI and whatever to raid his place, both in Rachel and in Las Vegas. So I don't know if there's some speculation that he may have been flying a drone over restricted airspace, or he was flying above the 400 feet limit, I think, for non-commercial drones. I think there's a altitude above ground level you can't exceed. He may have done that.
Oh wow!
But they took all his computers, his iPad. I think he had one or two cell phones. He took those. In other words, they've rendered him blind. And I've seen a lot of the stuff that he's posted, and it isn't anything that's earth shattering. But if he's staying in Rachel, if anything spooky is going to take off out of Area 51, you're going to see it from Rachel.
Yeah,
I don't care how you look at it. You know, all program aircraft, all program. I can't even say aircraft because not all of them are aircraft, but everything takes off to the north. If it's involved in any type of flight test, that's where they have the tracking cameras. They have 8 of them. They're about a mile apart, east as far as from the center line of the runway, and they go out, I think, about 1 or 2 mile increments, and they're on both sides of the flight path. So about every 2 miles, you'll have a set of cameras that are geared towards looking. You know, they're slave to probably a central location that they can lock onto the targeted craft as it's flying. So everything it takes off during flight tests out of Area 51 is on camera. Nothing takes off that isn't that is not taped. Still live video, high speed. So you can see if something happened with the high speed cameras, they can slow it down and see the aircraft if it's going to come apart. Like Ridnour, when he took off the first production F-117, they reversed the pitch and yaw gyros outputs. And he did the same thing that happened with Mel Vavadich on an A-12 Blackbird. He crashed on takeoff. The airplane, he pulled the stick back, the thing yawed. He overcorrected the yaw and it pitched up. He ended up just cartwheeling. And that airplane's sitting on a pylon at headquarters of the Skunk Works there at Palmdale now.
How much of it got damaged?
Oh, the airplane was totaled.
I mean, I'm surprised they just, as the rest of it, you're saying it's mounted right now as a...
Right now, they took, the type of construction, it's much like they build a race car. They build it from the inside out instead of from the outside in. On a regular airplane, you build the skeleton and then you put the skin on it and then you add the wings and everything else. As we're on the F-117, and I don't know the correct. I did know it. It's in my brain somewhere, but the correct terminology for the type of structure it is. But it's very, very strong. But they start with the keel. They build the box and they start building boxes on top of that, and that's. So the airframe itself was torn up pretty bad. I have a photo of it. I don't know if I can.
Let's see.
Let's see. New slide. Let me see. You have no slides. Okay. I'm not sure where you. Oh, from my computer. Okay. Upload a file. Here we go. Now, I haven't done this before, so I'm not sure how it's going to turn out, but we'll find out here shortly. F-117. See if I had the crash shots of it here somewhere. I just got to find it. Yeah, here it is. Oh, come on. It doesn't. Let me try that again.
If we can do this.
Okay.
Thanks for joining, everyone.
I'm trying to figure out how to do. I should have done this beforehand, but like all things, you don't figure it out until it's time to do it.
Why do it later when we can do it later?
Right.
So, on a side note, so Jim and I wanted to keep on track for Thursdays. We didn't want to be short. Thanks for joining, everyone. We're not going to cut our broadcast short this week. It will go full time, but I'm coming to you from Utah, where I have been doing some filming. I was in Moab with Rex from Leak Project, doing the upheaval dome. So Canyonlands, we were looking at some of the, was it a meteoric impact, or was it, one of the theories is large plasma or lightning bolts, interplanetary lightning. That was really interesting. We filmed just this last weekend. So on top of a compiling list of things to bring to you later on notaliens.com, it will be pictures from Moab and Canyonlands and the upheaval dome. Definitely worth the hike. Not too difficult. Definitely worth checking out. Jim, I have a question for you. Sure. While you're digging. So I'm busy here in Salt Lake, and I noticed quite a decent looking air museum.
Oh, you have to go up to Ogden and go to the Hill Aerospace Museum.
Drove right by it.
Yeah, you can't miss it. It's right off the freeway. No admission.
Oh, you're kidding?
No, it's an Air Force Museum annex, so they're not allowed to charge admission to national museums. Now, if it's a private museum like the Museum of Flight or Pima Air and Space Museum, then you have to pay because they're not an arm of the Air Force Museum or the National Museum organizations. So they have an incredible collection both inside and outside. They have the only SR-71C, which was a sort of a kludged together trainer after they crashed one. They needed a second trainer, so they took the back half of the very first YF-12 interceptor that broke its hit a hole on landing on the dry lake bed there at Rogers Dry Lake Bed, and ripped the front landing gear off and broke the nose. Well, they didn't use that part. They used the back half, which is from 715 splice on back, and then they used the forward fuselage. Was a functional engineering mock-up that was never meant to fly, because it was made, structurally the same as the SR-71 A and Bs. They decided to make the SR-71C 7981, and that was the very last Blackbird assembled. And that's what
is that one sitting outside, and is it gray?
No, it's sitting inside, and it's black.
All right. I assumed it was, but I was driving. So for those that don't know Salt Lake very well, the valley that Salt Lake City's in has a ton of suburbs. It's just like one giant suburb, but there's a north-south freeway, and the speed limit's 70. And in reality, that's 80 to 100. And so despite being a very well laid out highway, it's anywhere from 4 to 6 lanes wide, including exits. You can't really look too long. And by the time you get up that far to where the museum is, the traffic spread out a little bit. But Jim, I'm like looking, and I've thought, oh man, I got to talk to you about this because I just saw it today. And I did not look too long in fear of going from 100 to 0 or some combo.
Yeah. Yeah, but you'll see signs. It'll say Hill Air Force Base as you're heading north on 15. And it may even say the museum, but it will say Hill Air Force Base, and that's where you turn off. And as soon as you turn off, the exit and the entrance to the museum is right there. It's just before the entrance going into the base. So,
well, we were at the Upheaval Dome in Canyonlands, so that was Moab. We were south. Is there anything that I should be aware of for here besides that museum? Is there anything else, or is there anything else in the museum that stands out that I should be looking at?
well, they have an F-117.
Oh yeah. Anything behind? Did they ruin that one, or did they just get it?
No, they just got it. They're putting it together. I mean, they do beautiful work there, and most of the aircraft that are there are in absolutely pristine shape, because the depot, one of the 3 Air Force depots, is at Hill. You know, and you have one at Hill, one in Oklahoma City, and one in Warner Robins, Georgia. There used to be one in Sacramento. There used to be one at Kelly Air Force Base in Texas, and there was one other one. I can't remember where in the heck it was, but they have all closed. So, but they have the talent to do everything there at Hill. So all the airplanes are really, really nice looking. Now, it took the Hill crew, and these were active duty guys. The guys actually go in and recover aircraft, operational aircraft that may have crashed. They went in there. It took them 6 weeks to dismantle and take the wings off of the Blackbird when it was at Beale to transport it to Hill Air Force Base. It took our guys pretty much, this is the Air Force, Air National Guard guys. It took our guys 2.5 days to take our airplane apart.
Wow.
And I don't know why they were sort of fiddle farting around with they're using die grinders with a 4-inch cutting wheel, and you're cutting through 18 titanium wing beams to take the engine nacelles off. And that's got, that little one has got to be just a pain. What we got the K-12 rescue saw, which is gas powered. And we just, as we're sawing through it, it really did a number on, like I said, it took us a day to cut the wings off.
Hey, that's all titanium though. How hard is it to really cut through all that stuff? How difficult is it to get through titanium?
I mean, if you have the right cutting equipment, and they use a phenolic blade, and it cuts through anything. And the K-12 rescue saw is exactly that. They use that for cutting the size of an airplane open to get people out. And it's every crash recovery vehicle at an airport will have those types of saws. And you've seen them on the local news when there's been a real massive accident, and they're going in there and they're cutting the roof off a car, and they'll have this. It sort of looks like a chainsaw, except it has a round disc, and it's just going through, and they're just whacking the pillars off to take the roof off.
And you're saying there's no chance this plane's going back together properly, right?
This is true. Now, when we cut our A-12 apart, one of the things we did, it was put together when we got it back to Minneapolis in such a way that it could have been flown again.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, when we cut it, before we cut it, there's 18 wing beams. And on the even numbered wing beams, we clamped an 8-inch by 2-inch by 1/4-inch pieces of rolled steel. We clamped it on over where we're going to cut, and then we drilled 4 holes in each side of 4 1/4-inch holes on each side of the cut on the top, and then that was the even wing beams on the bottom. We did the odd wing beams. So when we put her back together, as long as those bolts went in there, it was going to line up pretty good. But we had a an engine stand that would allow for up, sideways, and rotation. So it would go on all the axes to help align that wing up. Because what you have to not only do we have to align the alignment, the alignment strips when we put it back together. We also had to line up the 2,400 screw holes on the skin panels that we took off. So that was the real challenge.
I never asked you this. I know the complexity. A lot of people don't know. I don't want to just dive into the spy plane exclusively tonight. However, was there fuel left in any way in the parts? I mean, because the fuel ran the hydraulics, the fuel ran everything.
Right, so right.
How hazardous was it?
Well, first of all, JP7, you can take an acetylene torch to it and put it on JP7, and it may boil it, but it's not going to catch on fire.
That's nuts.
You need a chemical igniter to light it. And they use it's called TEB, triethylene boron, and it's a pyrophoric chemical. It ignites with contact with air. So I don't even know how. I'm not even sure how they manufacture it and transport and move it around. Because when you're loading it to the airplane, if all of a sudden you expose that to air, it will ignite. So you have to be pretty careful with that. So
there was nothing that accidentally oozed out at any point. No flash fires.
No. Now, when we were working on an F4 that had been in the boneyard for 25 years, and we were just using the forward fuselage, and we were cutting into the number one fuel tank, which is right behind the back seater. And as we're cutting it, sparks are flying everywhere. I took this neoprene bladder out, and there was about 5 gallons of JP4, which is almost as explosive as dynamite or nitroglycerin. I'm surprised we didn't end up in a different town when we were working on that airplane.
Yeah. Outside of the Blackbird, have you had any other favorite, or have you known anyone else to transport anything that was just as interesting to you as the Blackbird? Was there anything else that you ran into as far as?
No, I mean, living here in the greater Tucson area, if you're in Interstate 10, there are times when a flatbed tractor and trailer will go flying by you, or you pass it when it has an airplane on the back of it, either going to the boneyard because it's a non-flyable and they're just put it in there to be cut up, or it's going to some other location like a museum, or and maybe a tech school needs an airplane to work on. So they do donate those airplanes to those types of schools. So you will see those on the road. But moving a Blackbird, the only thing that would be just as exciting would be moving an F-117. And they're starting to move those around. There's up in Michigan, they got their F-117. Palm Springs has their F-117. Pima is getting theirs. There are about 3 or 4 others, and they're going to eventually, all the F-117s will probably be placed in museums. First of all, the first thing that the Lockheed has to do, and I think it's Lockheed because they charge an arm and a leg, is they have to take off all of the radar absorption material. It's also referred to as RAM. They have to take that, and they have to take off all the composite leading and trailing edges on both on the twin V-tails and the control surface and the leading edge. Those are all made of probably the same type of material that the pie panels are made on the Blackbird, which are used to reduce the radar cross section. They're composite panels. Yeah.
Of the stuff that's, and this is something relational to the past now, as far as anything that's new that you're aware of that is flying, do you think for all the Tic Tacs or assorted other unidentified objects, what do you think the fastest or what do you suspect is the most current or non-disclosed, unphotographed? Let's start with the military options.
The sixth generation fighter, advanced tactical fighter, is being flight tested at the place right behind me at Area 51. Yeah, the Air Force admits it. I don't know anybody who's photographed it yet. There was one Google Earth shot. It looked like almost like the spade on the ace of spade on a playing card. It almost looked like that without the tail of the spade.
Yeah,
sort of a inverted heart, but with 3 trailing edge points. But they were rounded. They weren't. They didn't have straight leading edges. So I don't know if that was just something to screw people over, because they're really good at that. Back in the day, this is before the general public had the ability to go look at Google Earth. But back in the day when the Russians were overflying, or the Soviet Union was overflying Area 51 with their reconnaissance satellites, the first thing when you're dealing with program aircraft at Area 51, every morning at 6 o'clock, they have a briefing and they give out the satellite schedule for the day. And it tells you when you're going to be vulnerable, whether it's infrared, whether it's visible light. Are you going to be detectable on the ground? Yeah. Are you going to be detected in the air? Maybe not, so you can fly. So they do a couple things. One of the things that happens, if you've had an aircraft on the ramp in the desert, when it taxis away, even for over an hour, the shadow of the airplane is still visible if you're looking at infrared. So one of the things they did on the south, they call Baja, and it's if you go, that would be the Baja area of Area 51. That's the south part.
Look at everyone's screen.
What that building is, where my finger is, I don't know what that is, but they has to be handling some nasty stuff, because it's well over a mile away from the main part of the base. And the only reason for that, not because of classification, but because of imminent danger to anybody in or near that hangar when they're doing whatever they're doing. So they're using really, really nasty chemicals for a weapon system. I doubt seriously it's for propulsion, but
do they separate? I mean, I guess we don't know, but do we know? Do they separate the contractors? Did you ever get any words from any of the skunk work guys that we work with the Phantom guys? Or
no. In today's world of spooky airplanes, for example, the B-2 stealth bomber, the Northrop Grumman B-2 stealth bomber, Northrop Grumman makes the cockpit, the leading edge, and the control surfaces. The bulk of the airplane is made by Boeing. Boeing did the aft center fuselage, the outer wings, and when they controlled LTV, they built the inner wings and the engine nacelles. So it's really a Boeing B-2 with Northrop Grumman as the final assembler. But since they got the contract, they let the companies that had the expertise to build certain parts of the airplane that they didn't want to take on that challenge.
Well, if they're collaborating like that, then I find it fascinating that the contractors on the ground are also contractors that are responsible for the satellites that they're trying to avoid overhead.
Well, they may be part of the same corporate hierarchy, but they are totally separate entities. And there may be some cross-pollination there. So, well, we don't want people to see what we're doing, so we're gonna make the images fuzzy or whatever. But with all the visible light satellites up there, it would be pretty hard for someone to say, no, we're going to make sure that even satellite imaging will won't be able to catch this, this craft, whatever it is, whether it's a UFO or whether it's whether it looks like a conventional airplane.
Do you think that Area 51 is so cliched out now that they don't really use it? It's almost more for misinformation or misdirection. Do you think maybe it's...
No, they've said that they closed it back in the 90s. Jim Wilson, who was the editor at Popular Mechanics, not Popular Science, that was Stu Brown, said that Area 51 must be closed because I went to a gate and it was a rusted lock on it and I honked my horn and no one came. Well, when that's kind of a bizarre statement, but if you want to find out how active Area 51 is, then I suggest you take the back road from Tipico Valley. If you come off Hancock Summit into Tipico Valley, which is east of Area 51.
Everyone write this down now. If you want to go to Area 51 and actually look at stuff, listen to what Jim's saying now. Before he blows through it, I'm totally interrupting, but Jim is actually giving you where you can go as a public human being, and you don't have to Google now for hours, but this is exactly where to go near Area 51 that's going to get you possibly really good photos. So sorry, tell people where to go.
Right. So, I mean, if you want to get arrested, as you're coming down off of Hancock Summit, you'll see the road heading due west, and that is the back road to Area 51. It's a 4-lane dirt road. And I've been all the way down there to the guard shack back in '89 when I was with John Lear. We were about 3/4 mile inside of Area 51, but they weren't as squirrely back then. But if you want to see something, the spooky airplanes fly on weekends. So if you're in Southern California, Southern Nevada, or Northern Arizona, and you want to take a day trip or just a weekend trip, that's when they're going to fly. And it could be a craft that looks like a normal airplane. It could be something that looks like a Tic Tac. It could be something that looks like a TR-3B. Even though I have friends that work out there and they're telling me that they don't have any Tic Tacs or TR-3Bs at Area 51. So
that one's a bit of a mystery, isn't it? I mean, so no one that you know of in any military, in any of the vendors, that none of them are claiming the Tic Tacs.
Correct. I had a friend of mine. He's retired now, but he was within the top 2 or 3 of being the number one guy at the Skunk Works. And I would ask him. I said, "Hey, is there anything that'll get me excited?" And he said, "No." He said, what gets you excited gets me excited, and I haven't seen anything, and I know most everything that's going on there. And he said, no, it doesn't mean that something isn't being created in an environment that's so totally classified that it would just blow you away. Now, when I interviewed Jeff Babion, the now retired number one guy at the Skunk Works, I looked him straight in the eye and said, "What kind of alien technology is being used in Skunk Works programs?" And I mean, he wasn't blown away. He wasn't looking around somewhere else. He looked me straight in the eye and he says, "I have absolutely no knowledge of any alien technology it's using on any of the programs we're currently working that I'm aware of." Said, "I may not be, something may have been built and developed before I got here that I'm not cleared to see. So it doesn't mean it wasn't developed and flown out of here, but I have access to people that have been there almost continuously since 1955. And when I asked them about it, they said, no, I said they would love to see something weird too, but they haven't seen, but it's not there." So is there another place where we're flying really spooky alien technology? about the only place I think that would be
Michigan. No.
Relatively safe from encroachment from the public, the flying public, or just people like myself would be in the middle of Australia.
Oh gosh, and I've been to Australia a couple times. That would be correct. It's 77% non-occupied by humans. There's a population estimate of about 23 million, I think now, give or take, for a continent. It's a continent 77 to 78% unoccupied by humans.
Yeah. And there are places out there you can be there's nothing for 1,000 miles in any direction.
Oh, here's a loaded question for those that haven't heard before.
Okay. What's my opinion of Bob Lazar?
Now, they're personal friends, so everybody get ready for this opinion.
Yeah. I believe Bob Lazar is exactly who he says he is. And the reason I say that is that Bob Lazar, I met him before he went to work out in the desert. I met him because of my friendship with John Lear. And Bob looked at me straight at this just before he got hired out there at S4. I had just photographed the F-117. I could get into that, how I did that and how I get to meet Bob Lazar. I'll start from the beginning. On the 11th of November, 1988, the Air Force announced the existence of the F-117 stealth fighter. They had just a terrible shot of it. It was shot with a telephoto. It was backlit. I think they overcooked the negative, and it was a terrible photo. But they released a real photo of the F-117. Well, the first week of January, we had to go get through Christmas, Thanksgiving and Christmas. I called up John Lear, and they said, "Do you know how to get to the base that the F-117s are flying out of?" And he said, "Yeah, they're right outside of Tonopah." So on the first week of January 1989, I head up. I fly into Las Vegas. John and I rent a car. We're heading up due north on US 95 on the
this
way
is John Lear for everyone.
Yeah. I'm with John Lear, and we just passed Scotty's Junction. And those of you familiar with Nevada, Scotty's Junction is sort of a famous place. It was a legal house of ill repute that the government took over for back taxes, and they ran it into the ground. So it's no longer. So about 15 miles or 15 or 20 miles north of Scotty's Junction, we're cruising along at 75, 80 miles an hour. And an F-117 crosses right in front of us, about 1,500 feet off the ground, about 45 degrees angle across the road. I about crashed the car. So we get to Tonopah, we grab a quick bite. We head down US 6, 14 miles, with a big sign that says Tonopah Test Range. You head down there 18 miles, and you come to the main gate of, referred to as TTR. And I'm retired military, so I can get on a base, but not a restricted access base. So we just went along the fence line, and you can see the whole base. I mean, it's just right there. It's 8 miles away. You can see all 60 some odd hangars. And I look to the north, and I can see a black fuzzy ball with a light underneath it, and a smaller one, sort of whitish with a white light underneath it. And I just assumed it was an F-117 and a T-38 chase plane. Now, this is before digital cameras. I normally shot Kodachrome slide film, but I needed quick turnaround. So I'm shooting Kodacolor 100, fine grain color print film. I have a Nikon camera and a Nikon lens. And, I put it on this object, and it's getting close to me. It's starting to fill up the viewfinder. And now I'm looking at an F-117. I can see the whole airplane. It's filling up the viewfinder. And I was like a 10-year-old boy seeing a naked woman the first time. My body is vibrating. So I
It
shoot
says a
all
lot about Jim's early biology for those listening
right.
and haven't thought about that. And of course, your cinematic effects for those that want to get into film and actual like that cinema. You've got a lot of heads up now on how to
Yeah,
go retro and also about Jim's biology. You're welcome, Jim.
right. Thank you. I appreciate that.
This is all
So
about meeting Bob Lazar. For everyone, we are
right,
still
right,
on track.
right. So back in the day, back in the 1980s, actually started in the 70s, you didn't have baristas in parking lots. You had photomats. And that's where you could
Yeah.
drop off your print film on one day and pick it up the next. And I knew by the time we got back to Las Vegas, the photomats were closed, and I had to wait another day. And I'm kind of irritated that I have this, that I shot this airplane, and I don't know if any of them are good because I was vibrating. I could not stop shaking. So we head on out.
Is Jim Lear watching you like out of your mind the whole time?
No, he's pretty excited too because he loves things that go bump in the night. And he loves weird stuff.
So you're both, that's one part of the story you've never talked about. The two of you are both excited like children.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to photograph something that the general public has not seen.
Yeah. So at what point does he suddenly go, I got a friend named Bob that can help us print this?
No, didn't say that at all. So we leave, we stop in Rachel for another quick bite. And then we, at the Little Alien, and then we're heading off to Vegas. We get there, it's a little bit after 9 p.m. when we got there. And we're there about 10 or 15 minutes and knocking the front door. And Lear says, hey, I got a friend of mine just moving here from Albuquerque. He's interviewing for a job out in the desert. I think you'll like him. So he goes, to the front door, opens up, brings him into the John's study, which was a fascinating place to begin with. And we start talking, and he said, that he's interviewing for a job, but he hasn't been out there yet. He doesn't know what he's going to be doing. So I told him about my dilemma about shooting the 117, and he said, well, I have a processing unit at home. He lives over on the other side of town. John lives near Nellis, near the base of Sunrise Ridge, and Lazar lives off of West Charleston. So we jump in. He said, well, let's go over to my place. And so we grab my film, throw it in my pocket, jump in the car, and we're about a block from Lear's place. And Lazar looks at me and he says, I feel sorry for that dumb SOB Lear. I said, what do you mean? He said, the jackass believes in UFOs. I mean, go figure. He's from this world famous aviation family. I mean, his dad brought Learjet to the world, and this guy believes in flying saucers. He says, I'm a nuclear physicist. If can't prove it mathematically or put my hands on it, it doesn't exist. And said, you couldn't put a gun to my head to convince me that UFOs were real. So we get to Lazar's house. We processed the film. There were about 3 or 4 that were not that were not fuzzy. They were fairly sharp. And so I took one of the photos, sent it to Mike Dornheim, who was one of the senior writers there at Aviation Week, and it made the front cover of Aviation Week.
Nice. So you did you guys keep up right from that moment on, or did you just touch base sporadically? And
no, every time I was in Vegas, I went over Lazar's, and because of knowing John Lear, I knew George Knapp before I met Bob Lazar. And of course, now they're sort of attached at the hip. But it was just it was a gathering of like minds during the 90s. I was talking with Stu Brown about it a couple of days ago, that the timing was perfect to go up to Whitesides, to go on Freedom Ridge, to find and discover the Little Alien, and where everything that goes on in the desert. Now to get back to the Little Alien and Area 51, if you want to see something spooky, and I would love it if one of you who live fairly close would do it on a regular basis, is as you're on Nevada Highway 375, which is referred to as the extraterrestrial highway,
Yeah.
And as you're coming off the summit and you can see the town or the village of Rachel, Nevada, I think it's 82 people on a good day. You'll see the town. You'll see a lot of fields out there that are being watered down with the crops, the big circles where they have the spraying units going on because they have a big aquifer in that area. But there's a road just before you get to into Rachel. There's a road that heads due west to the gate at the bombing range. If you were to go down that road about 2 miles, I'd have to measure it out exactly, but it's about 2 miles. There's a significant road that goes off to the south, off to your left. That's the road that went to the Groom mine. Well, about a quarter of a mile west of that is another turnoff you can see, and you can just follow the path. And that's where you want to be. You want to become invisible on the north fence line, because what's going to happen on weekends, the spooky airplanes fly within about an hour of sunrise. So right now, middle of winter, your sunrise is up there. Was it 6:30? No, 7:30 or something like that, or 7:15. So about an hour after sunrise is when they're going to fly, and they're going to fly for about an hour and a half. So if you're in the area and you can get in, you can get out there without getting seen. Now, prior to any spooky airplane flying or craft, whether they're UFOs or whether they're conventional aircraft, they'll send a Pavehawk out and it will fly the perimeter of Area 51 to make sure that there isn't anybody that they don't want them to see what they're going to fly that morning. So what you do is, if my suggestion is, you get a white 4-door pickup. Doesn't make any difference, whether it's 4-wheel drive or 2-wheel drive, because that's what the security people and the ranchers use. And you go up to it, one of the watering troughs. This is on the south side of that back road to the bombing range, and plop yourself down there. And if you see a Pavehawk, flying the perimeter, go look like you're doing something with the pump. They'll ignore you. You become invisible. You're hiding in plain sight.
And then there's a how-to. We just need to do a map and a drawing. We should do we should do that next week. Oh, yeah. Wait, it's Thanksgiving or whatever. Yeah. We should do it. We'll give people. I mean, for those that want to go out and photograph things, I guess we have an army of listeners out there that are all interested in this. For those traveling, what are some of the things, I guess, outside of like the guesswork of what may or may not be flying at dawn or dusk or in the middle of the night? What else hasn't been photographed that you're aware of that we should be fun to get on film? Well, there must be something. I mean, what else besides Area 51? I mean, there's usually, like the SR-71 only flew out of a couple places. Where else would you even go? Where's the new Area 51? Dang it.
There's now, I haven't been able to get any confirmation from anybody other than the fact that it's a 90-minute drive for guys who are working on whatever this program is from Twins Falls, Idaho. So I figured 90 minutes is 100 miles. So I took a 100-mile radius around Twin Falls, and I'm told it's near the Pacific Northwest, but it's not in the Pacific Northwest. And the Pacific Northwest comprises of Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. Now, if it's pretty close to it, which means it's either going to be in far western Montana in the mountains, which is highly unlikely, or it's in the extreme northeast corner of Nevada. And if you go into Google Earth and you look at the extreme northeast corner of Nevada, the last time I looked, which was a couple months ago, it was pixelated. Now, there wasn't any definition to the topography, which tells me that the government has said we're not going to put a restricted area on your official FAA maps, because that's an instant flag for anybody like myself who's looking for new restricted areas, which means maybe there's a new base there. But But 3 people have said that a program that went operational out of Area 51. Area 51 can't accommodate operational programs. Stuff is just too sensitive. If you're in the Air Force, Navy, or Marines, those that fly airplanes, the Army fly helicopters. You go to a base, you're there for 2 years or 3 years, say you're making a career out of it, and then you're going to go somewhere else. Well, they can't have that at a place like a 51. They have to be able to know exactly where, the guys, whoever they are working there at the test site. They have to be vetted. They have to be cleared, and they're not just going to let anybody come in. If the president of the United States wants to go to Area 51, he has to get permission. Because because the big sign saying use of deadly force authorized, which means they have already been pre-cleared to shoot your butt if you decide to penetrate. They don't. Now, in September of 19, when they had the Storm Area 51 gathering.
Terrible idea. Terrible.
Yeah.
Idea.
And they said there was 2 million people had said they're definitely going to go, and 5 million had said they may go. That's more than double the population of the whole state of Nevada. And in the 3 major counties in and around Area 51, which are Esmeralda, Nye, and Lincoln County, there's less than 175 hotel motel rooms available. And they were going to try to, yeah. But you better if you're in the desert, even if it's not hot, it's dry, and you need a lot of water and a lot of food, and there are no accommodations. Yeah. So someone said, well, how are they going to stop 2 million people from raiding Area 51? You shoot to whoever's up front.
Right. Yeah. And that's a terrible idea.
And everybody turn around and leave. And the other thing one thing they brought in there is they brought in all non-lethal crowd control equipment. The microwave systems where you feel like you're fire. It doesn't do any damage to you, but it affects your attitude. And the other is the brown sound. And if you're charging the gate at Area 51 and you get hit with this extremely low frequency, very intense, low frequency sound, all your bowels empty out. And your level of enthusiasm is diminished significantly if you have a pants full of poop. So
for graphics, for everyone,
right.
That would, I don't know if I want to see 5 million people all pooping themselves.
They would. I mean,
that a lot of laundry.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Or a lot of thrown away laundry.
So if you're going out in the desert and you're going to snoop in and around Area 51 or Tonopah Test Range, be careful for critters. They have scorpions. They'd be like a bee sting. They're not going to kill you, but they have Mojave green rattlesnakes. And if you get bit by a Mojave green, just sit down, make your peace with God, because you're not going to make it.
Really?
Because you're 100 miles from the closest hospital. So if you were to get bit, and you're a long way from even the fence line, or you're just out there, and there's areas you don't have cell phone coverage, you're in a lot of trouble. So never go out by yourself. And when you go out, always assume that the car is going to break down, or you're going to get stuck. So you have adequate clothing, because it gets really cold in the desert at night. And even if it was 75, 80 during the day, it could drop down in the 20s at night. So you could die of hypothermia. So bring more water than you need, then double it. Because it's not going to spoil on you, and you can last for a long time without any food, but you can last very long without water. So
no anti-venom for the snake.
No, that stuff is it's only kept in hospitals.
So all right then.
So you be careful. You wear boots. Bring a lawn chair that You go to Walmart or Target and pick up a lawn chair before you go. And if you can do any hiking, I would go and buy a cheap pair of boots because the volcanic rock there just tear the daylights out of. If you have real nice set of hiking boots, that it's almost like glass. It just cuts your boots to ribbons. Jeez. So buy a cheap pair of work boots at Walmart, a lawn chair, and that's basically what you need, and some duct tape because if you're going to sit out there at night. Now, if you have night vision goggles, that's even better. But if you're going to be sitting out there waiting for something to happen, tape up your cuffs, your pant legs, so critters can't crawl up your legs. They've been known to do that. That's a desert. The desert is not a friendly place. It can be very, very challenging.
And you are, no matter what, we have been talking about an area that is public land. We're not talking about, interfering with any work being done by the government. The spaces we're talking about are public and public accessible, right?
Correct. And the security people south of the fence line have no jurisdiction outside of the perimeter of Area 51. The only, they can't arrest you, they can't hold you. They may pull a gun on you and that will hold you, but they really have no legal authority outside the fence line. And the only people that can arrest you would be the county sheriff.
Right. So there's a lot of opportunities to maybe film, see something that no one's seen yet. Boy, you sold and got on the cover of a magazine for your photography. I wonder what the best place would be now there's so many organizations interested. I wonder whether it's an aviation enthusiast or not, where would you bring your photo to submit?
I'd bring it back to Aviation Week. I still know a lot of guys there and make the front cover, but that all of a sudden everybody else is going to want it.
Yeah.
And I had now my shot of Area 51, which I took from Whitesides. I get a call. This is back in the early 90s. I get a call from NBC and said, we'd like to use your Area 51 shot on a program that we're putting together. I said, well, it's not going to be free, so we'll give you $250. I said, no, you're going to give me $2,500. Well, no, we've already put it into the piece, and it's airing tonight. I said, it's not airing tonight if you don't have my permission, and my permission to use my photo of Area 51 it costs you $2,500. And he said, I'll get right back to you. And about 2 minutes later, they called back. It's been approved. Because they would literally have to cancel the whole thing.
Yeah. So Aaron's Energy, this question, I got to work with Alex Hoffman of Hoffman Optics a couple years ago, actually. He does a lot of the night vision goggles for Camp Pendleton and the Marines, and for snipers, and for, of course, just general night vision. It's an interesting technology, but I can't tell you anything specifically about the frequency other than what was new in 2019 was they were moving to a black and white
versus the green and white, or the green and black, whatever it is.
Yeah, and so if you don't know, the theory was that if you're a sniper or you're working and you need to long term be wearing them for hours, then it's more comfortable on your eyes to not be in the green.
Okay. So
if that was the reference, or I don't know, do you have anything else for frequency for night vision?
No. I mean, I haven't heard anybody talking about frequencies as it related to night vision. I mean, you're dealing with a certain part of the light spectrum of which our eyes can't. We can only see just a sliver of the visible light.
That's actually possible.
Right.
Yeah, Alex was quite brilliant guy when he was talking to me about it. As we were at Contact in the Desert. It was 2019, and we helped about 500 people use the various versions of the night vision goggles to look up at the night sky, and there was some crazy stuff going on. That was Palm Springs, of course, not too far from Joshua Tree. That's where the last contact was in the before time. And we were doing it, and the explanation, the only thing that he was excited about was the drain on the human eye. If you're equipped with these night vision goggles, the color spectrum in green is just draining if you constantly look through it. So the other color variations were also clarifying in details depending on what you're trying to look for, whether you're a sniper, or whether you're maybe looking for other just random night moving objects. He did go into the frequency of the optics of the human eye. So that's Alex Hoffman talking to me. But as far as anything else to the question, I couldn't. I know that they're constantly developing. I can tell you that I had a couple guys come running up when it was myself and another gal, and we were working with Alex. They were so excited that the next gen night vision goggles were there for sale, available to the public. Granted, with a disclosure that was a couple pages long that said, you can't take it out of country. I don't know what they're thinking, because once it's in private citizen hands, I'm pretty sure the governments that we don't want to have it get it. So I don't, whatever. But they were just so excited that it was a new, the next gen had just hit, and that was in, that was June or July of 2019. And they're fascinating, because the stuff going on in the night sky is not explainable. Area 51's great, but there are things going on if you just put on these night vision goggles and lay back like you're fishing. It doesn't take too long, besides satellites and other technology. I don't know. Have you ever worn them?
Yeah. Yeah. In June of 2020, or was it? No, June of 2021, I was in, come on. It's northern Arizona. Beautiful area, and it's right in the tip of my tongue, but there's a lot of crap in here too. It doesn't want to come out.
Right.
We were there was a group of us that we were at the Bradshaw Ranch, and it's a lot like Skicker. There's all sorts of weird stuff going on there. We got there about 11 o'clock at night, and we were there until about 3 o'clock in the morning. And we're looking at the night sky with these night vision, and it was. My mind again has gone blank. I can't remember Leslie's last name. Yeah.
Were they detailed? The ones did you see anything that was?
Well, no, there were things flying through the sky that you could see with the night vision, but you couldn't see with the naked eye. There was a lot of activity, and it wasn't anything illuminated by the sun, because that was, we're talking from 11 o'clock to. We left about 2:30, I guess. So the sun's on the other side of the planet. So anything you're seeing straight up is be pretty much behind, in the shadow of the earth. And it was strange. And I know and I can't remember her name, and I should have written it down. Contact of the Desert in 2000, I think it was 2019. A young lady who's really into UFOs and whatever. She has her iPhone. I don't know what version iPhone, but there were 3 lights, triangular lights, and that's all you could see. And they were in the clouds and whatever. And that she's videotaping that. And then when she came down and looked at it on a larger screen, you could see the triangle. You could see the shape of the TR3B, and it was just sitting there in the clouds, and then it moved off.
Just
So
hovering?
yeah, no noise. And this was at one of the night functions at Contact in the Desert, and it's got to be well, whenever the last one was, and
Well,
before
the
the
last one
pandemic.
was 2019, and you were
Yeah.
there too.
Was I? No.
Were you?
No,
were you?
No, I wasn't.
Oh, I was going to say everyone gets to find out on air automatically that, or instantly, that we were there together. That would be. We did not know each other then, but
No.
I was there.
My
like I said,
my first UFO thing was the one in March of 19 in Phoenix, and I can't remember the name of the gathering, but I know Michael Schratt was going to be there. Michael's been a friend of mine for 25 years, so I wanted to be there for that, and that's when I introduced myself to a couple of people, and they said, "I didn't see your name on the program." I said, "I didn't know I was going to be here until this morning."
yeah.
So I wasn't invited as far as being a participant. So it's so that's when I really got involved in things, spooky things, UFOs, MUFON, and the group that I'm part of now, which I really enjoy.
Yeah, we should have Michael on. We have talked about it. I have not been able to book him, so we should really wrangle Michael over here for a conversation about some of those absolutely incredible. I mean, he's done such a great job of documenting actual indisputable UFO interactions.
Michael Schratt just recently got his dream job, the job that he was born to do. I was talking to him last night, and I said, "Can I tell the world who you're working for?" Well, I said it's not a big secret, but no. So I'm not gonna say. But Michael Schratt is now doing something that he was doing on the weekends out of his pocket, out of his money, not being reimbursed by anybody. And he was just brought on as a contractor. Making decent money, and all of his expenses are paid.
So, well, for those that, I mean, for not revealing who he's working for now, I mean, we could go a little bit for those that don't know. I guess you could talk a little bit about what you kind of helped get him into, and what he has had a passion for, I think is pretty interesting.
Michael Schratt has, well, first of all, he doesn't express his opinion when he's presenting events of the past. He's like Sergeant Friday in Dragnet. This is the facts and only the facts. There's no opinion. There's no BS thrown in there. There's no enhancement. It's just, This is how it is. Michael has if anybody's ever seen Michael at a presentation, he brings a 3-wing binder with him. Oh, it's about 8 inches thick. He has over 300 of them. And in those pages, he has not all, but a majority of the known UFO sightings, first-person sightings with drawings, with police reports, military reports, the whole bit. And he's been collecting all that for 20 some odd years. He's been granted access to UFO collections that have never seen the light of day, and he's been given access to it. He said between Christmas and I guess between Thanksgiving and New Year's, he'll be back in Chicago. He's going to be scanning 8,000 events. And those events all have multiple pages in them, and they're all going to be going into a searchable database. Everything is going to be being scanned in PDF files, so you can just punch in a word and it'll pull up everything. And he went to Roswell and he's been there twice. He was granted access to their historical archives and their libraries. He said he was working 12 hours a day scanning this stuff, and he has a document scanner that's specifically for scanning PDF files. You just put them in here and you go zip, 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 zip. So it's very, very fast. If you had to do it, like I have a little flat screen scanner. If I had to do every page that way, it would take years instead of a few hours. So that's what Michael's been doing, and the person that hired him is someone that once Michael decides
more of it.
Yeah. And then was it 2 weeks ago, I was on the Big Island in Hawaii with the Cousin brothers, and Michael Schratt was there, and we just had a great time. It's just, those guys are, there's some people who don't like them, and I don't know why. They're trying to get the word out of what's happening in the world of things go bump in the night, and they have a lot of followers. I mean, they have I think 800,000 subscribers or something like that.
They have a lot. They've had more. They've had less. But they're definitely willing to look at a little bit of everything.
Yeah, and I sort of fell into them almost by accident. I was helping Doc Skinner, who lives up in Sholo, Arizona. I was helping him move, and he got a phone call. He was on speakerphone, and he was talking to a couple of guys, and I heard him talking. He said, "Yeah, there's a guy. I think he lives in Arizona somewhere. That's a good friend of Bob Lazar." And Doc said, "Talking about Jim Goodall?" He said, "Yeah. You know how to get hold of him?" He says, "Yeah, he's about 2 feet from me." So
yeah.
So this was the day that Tucker Carlson, the federal government, and New York Times announced the fact that there are craft not made of this earth overflying some of our military installations.
That's something that this is a good watcher interaction, which is exactly that. The question is, are they not of this earth? Are they how likely are they old technology or old civilization with technology we think is new, or technology from expanding out of the universe? I mean, that's one of the blurred lines, isn't it?
For a couple of years, I was a docent up at Kitt Peak National Observatories. That's about 50 miles due west of downtown Tucson. The largest collection of optical telescopes in the United States. They have 22 optical telescopes, primary mirror ranging from a 12-inch to a 13-foot primary mirror. That's the 4-meter Mayall telescope. That one today it was modified and is being used to identify and track dark energy and dark matter. They know that 80% of the atomic weight of the universe is made up of dark matter, but we can't see it, we can't touch it, we can't taste it, we can't measure it, but it's there, and it affects everything in the universe. And that's what they're trying to identify on the 4-meter telescope on Kitt Peak. But the 2.1 meter telescope, and we have 3 telescopes that are 2.1 meters. But this particular on the 2.1 meter telescope, it was used by Caltech for 5 years in identifying exoplanets in a very, very small part of our Milky Way. And I mean, we're talking about a postage stamp size area of our Milky Way. And over the course of 5 years, using remote viewing, remote operation, because they were operating out of Caltech, out of Pasadena, and adaptive optics, they shine a UV laser up, and at 18 miles, it has to be a specific diameter. We can't see UV, but sensors can, and they look at the diameter of this beam. It has to be a precise diameter, and it adjusts a bendable mirror or a deflectable mirror 1,200 times a second to improve the sharpness of the image. And they get pretty close to the same image clarity as the Hubble Space Telescope.
But at a greater distance.
Right. But we can see things, and look, if the Hubble isn't available or isn't looking in that direction. But over the course of the 5 years that Caltech used the 2.1 meter, they identified 8,000 exoplanets in a very, very small area of our Milky Way. That's just our galaxy.
Right.
We're an insignificant solar system in an insignificant galaxy in an insignificant corner of the universe. And just before I left, being a docent, we had it was a beer and pizza gathering at the NOAA, which is the National Optical Astronomy Observatory's headquarters, which is at the University of Arizona here in Tucson. And it required all the astronomers, all the technicians, and all the docents to be at the meeting. And the gathering was a thank you for the hard work you've done. And they were going to talk about exoplanets. And this head guy gets up and he said he had just returned from a week-long gathering of everybody that is doing research on exoplanets on the planet. And they said using proven mathematical formulas and all the information from all these different observatories, they calculate for every star in the universe, there's 1.5 planets. And out of that incredible number of planets, they calculate there are 2 billion, that's with a B, 2 billion Earth-like planets orbiting a similar sized brown dwarf star in the inhabitable zone with liquid water. And if we're the only ones, what a waste of space.
For the ones that you've, just the numbers that are out there for the exoplanets and the possibility of foreign, it's not that there's not life above, beyond, or behind us. One of the things that I like to consider in the research that I do and in my book is how much of the technology we're seeing, or how much of our, in quotes, superhuman abilities, how much in this polygonal masonry, how much when we go to Peru and we start plugging the earth and looking at core samples and foundations of buildings and terra preta, the more it's understood that there's engineered soil all over the planet. To me, I think there's a missing connection with these local tic-tacs and these local encounters where I think there's enough evidences in our personal, downgraded or safe moded computer, broken computer moded planet. To me, it looks a lot like there was a more advanced civilization in any one of those planets that we're identifying out, or again, even within our own solar system. It seems like we've already left the planet once or twice or a few times, that we already went out. And not only could there be others, it seems like a redundant statement or an obvious one, but not only could there be a zillion other cultures and or alien technologies, but at the same time, if based on the indicators of our ancient past, it seems like our ability to have already left the planet and to have maybe occupied one of those spaces is already there. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you at all. I mean, it's just
it's your friend at Lockheed that talked about, I know you've repeated this story a couple of times, but you already heard that we have the ability to bring ET home.
Oh, that was Ben Rich, yeah.
And
the president of the Skunk Works. I mean, it wasn't just a guy at the Skunk Works, it was the president of the Skunk Works, where we have the ability to take ET home. He said that in 93. And then just before he died, he was at USC Medical Center. He was dying of esophageal cancer. It was Ben Rich.
Yeah.
And Ben Rich and I talked. I don't know how I got on his list, but either he would call me or I would call him. And we had those conversations went on for 25 years. Talked at least once a quarter. And it's just before he died, I called him. It was at USC USC Medical Center. And he said, and we'd been talking for about 20, 30 minutes. I could tell he's getting tired. And we were talking about an old friend, John Andrews. But he said, Jim, we have things out in the desert that's 50 years beyond what you can comprehend. And I can comprehend a heck of a lot.
Yeah.
And he said, if you see movies like Star Wars or Star Trek, we've been there, done that, or decided it wasn't worth the effort. And the question is, well, what did you decide that was worth the effort? Right. And can you? I said, do you want to expand upon that? And very typical Ben Rich, he said no. And then he had the nerve to die on me about 10 days later, and it just broke my heart.
That was personal. I accept that it was a personal attack on you. That's
yeah, it had to be. Yeah.
That's nothing like, we're not narcissistic at all. There's
no,
there's
I mean, there's too many incidences of events that you can't explain. Now the one that's really hits home was I was interviewing Dave Fruhoff. Dave is a retired lieutenant colonel, Air Force type. He called Lynchburg, Tennessee, the home of Jack Daniels, his when he retired. And my dad was working over at the Arnold Air Force Station wind tunnel complex, which is only 11 miles from Lynchburg. So I'm visiting my dad. This is back in the late 80s, early 90s. And I called up Dave and I said, hey, I'm going to be in the area. Can you sit down and talk? And he said, sure. So I went up to talk to him and interview him about, he was a student pilot and he had to bail out of a Blackbird. It had a total electrical failure. And he was on a trainer. That's why they had to get another trainer made. But we were talking, and he said, I said, do you believe in UFOs? And he says, absolutely, positively, they exist. I said, and I figured he was just going to say no. When I said, do you want to expand upon that? He said, sure. So he said, late 72, early 73, he's on a night training mission in an SR-71 Blackbird out of Kadena, Okinawa, in the far western Pacific. He said he's at 78,000 feet at Mach 2.7. He's going in a straight line, 3/4 moon off to the left. And it's about 11 o'clock at night. He notices a glint of something metallic, something reflective, 5 or 6 miles off to his right-hand side, and maybe 5,000 or 6,000 feet above him. So he gets on secure voice to see if there's another SR-71 up. And people at Kadena said, you were at the briefing. You're the only one who launched. He said, well, I have company. I'm going to go take a look. So about then, his backseater notices this object, this thing, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It has edges to it. It's not a disc. It's not a ball. Doesn't look like a Tic Tac. He can't get a shape out of it other than the fact that it's reflective. It's pretty good size. He didn't want to open his visor on his David Clark suit in case he had Murphy's Law would say that, we're going to lose pressurization as soon as you open that thing up. And of course, then you're dead. So because he was trying to see if he can get a shape just as it was blocking out the stars. Because at 80,000 feet, there's a lot of stars up there, even during the day. And so he had, at Mach 2.7, the throttles are a minimum afterburner. The airplane just likes to fly fast. So he advances the throttles. He doesn't take his eyes off and he's about a 10-degree bank, and he's climbing, and he's heading towards this object. He said when he was still a couple thousand feet below it, this thing took off at about a 30-degree angle of attack and left him in the dust. He figured it left him at between Mach 12 and Mach 16. He said it was just, boom, he was gone. So fast forward, that's 1973, 72 timeframe. He retires in 1979. He gets a job as facility manager at Area 51. So he said he was there about a year before he started asking any questions. Because one thing you don't do in a classified environment is started asking questions. They'll boot your butt out right away.
Yeah.
So after about a year, and they're at the club one night and they're talking, and Dave asked around and said, "Did we ever fly anything that could leave a blackbird in the dust?" And virtually everybody he talked to said it wasn't flown out of here. So Dave Fruhoff was a firm believer in non-man-made UFOs.
That's a beginner. I mean, that's absolutely possible. It's not that I think that there aren't things that go bump in the universe, but I think the things that go bump in the night that call this place home, because like you said, we're an insignificant end of the universe. It's not that we're not significant to us, which is back to our nurse dined on us. But I do think that there's a possibility that a former civilization survived, that there are segments of that population that rebuilt technology they may have not have been personally familiar with when it was even in use, whether it's the Hindu references to the the Vedic literature of it's some sort of that's all recent. Anything in our I hate quoting the recent stuff, because, and by recent I mean anything
the
in
last
the last
2,000 years,
yeah,
6,000 years, yeah.
No, yeah. See, the problem is that the only thing we have left is our genetics. Very odd anomalies in animals, creatures, biologies. It seems more biotechnical, and then of course there is on the quantum research end, there is collective human consciousness. There is indicators of in a million different there are many different indications that there's a connection with a third eye or between people or second sight or again the military use of remote viewing. I mean, there's plenty of proof that there's something more complex along with the superhumans out there that we've talked about. Everybody's familiar with Stieg and Wim Hof and Stieg Severance, and there are other superhumans out there, but they're not super. If it was 100,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago that these technologies, it just seems like we have this long misdirected or misinterpreted or misunderstood past, and so here we are now still witnessing, and have, like, through Michael Schratt's work and all the witnessing and the accounts of, like, there seems to have always been ticking through even biblical history, like Wallace Wagner's book about UFOs in the Bible. The reality is that there's this constant eyewitness account of basically the world being one giant Area 51 with a lot of remnant technology. And Jim Goodall's going around going, "I'm going to look at that thing. I don't think I'm supposed to, but we're going to do it."
Yeah.
And I just wonder how many. I'm not saying there aren't space traveling anthropologists, but I do think that there's only a few organizations in the last couple thousand years, and more I would call modern military and modern governments new to the game. But there are older institutions that may have been collecting these technologies or these observations. And I just wonder if we just table the eyewitness accounts, that there hasn't always been proof of a localized group of our ancestors producing technology and rediscovering their own abilities from whatever catastrophes they lived through or wars. I just wonder how much of those Tic Tac and little short white guys or anyone else that we see aren't genned up, modified humans that are just, they've been messing with their biotech like they used to before everything collapsed. I mean, we have an indication of a worldwide grid. Anyway, I go on, but it just seems like there is this possibility that we have a deeper connection to our own planet. And then on top of it, confusing it further, how many satellites did we send out? How many ancient SR-71s did we send into space that self-replicate, self-repair, have nanotechnology that uses solar, that uses frequency energy, that there is a limitless possibility of deep orbit satellite systems that maybe even circle all the way into the Kepler belts, that are Eric Von Daniken and I had a conversation personally. I don't know if I mentioned this one to you, but I've gotten to speak with him personally a few times. And one of them, I was talking about the satellites, and I was still pretty fascinated about the Black Knight. But he said, Jared, there is at least 6, to the best of his knowledge, at least 6 more satellite systems that, based on his research and private inquiry from retired, I can only assume that his sources are similar to the ones that I've been fortunate, lucky enough, or you've been fortunate, lucky enough to make friends with. But his research said that there's at least 6 satellites that are in orbit at high or weird or anomalous orbits that don't line up with anything that we've done in the last 100 years. But these are ancient satellite systems, and it's so fascinating to think that. I think the benefit for us to get back spiritually, I think because Aaron's Energy brought this up about the spiritual side of things. I think we're all looking for answers and questions, and I think, for as much as technical stuff is out there for everyone listening, I do think that there is a spiritual side or a collective, connective human consciousness that maybe we've muted a little bit because we get so digressed on our personal brand of connectivity instead of actually worrying about the action. I think that's one of the things that is the victim of us
twittering it to death.
Yeah. So there's this, I think, this need to not have filters, but I think when we look at this technology and compare it to when we see the technologies acting against us, like the tic tacs and the flight patterns and the energy use and the frequency use, and it's like, well, does it look like an operator of that machine, of that vehicle? Are they, that spacecraft or that flight craft, are they using technologies that we can see in ancient tech, in ancient, like the Nazca lines, in polygonal cymatic construction? Are we seeing it in our genes? What is it that, like the mind control to the weapon system and the computer system, our genetic 3D printing and our body mods that we're doing? I mean, we do very primitive, we cut a tongue in half and, it's like we've done a body mod. Meanwhile, there's there's CRISPRs out there, and you and I could sit in your garage on Thanksgiving in a week and we could be growing some really weird crap, Jim. I mean, haven't you been tempted to get a gene CRISPR? We could do some fun stuff. You have garage space. I've seen it, folks.
I mean, that would be pushing the envelope a little bit too hard. The thing gets me, and I hope I live long enough to find an explanation. And this is on ancient structures. There is some machining that's been done on hard, real hard rock surfaces that they say 20,000 years old or maybe 200,000 years old, and they can't explain what allowed them to do it. Well, I mean, just you go. We'll probably find some, definitely find some stuff in Peru. But if you go to Machu Picchu and some of the other historical sites, even in Egypt, I mean, it's just the technology to move some of the stones. We don't have that capability. Some of them are so big, we don't have the capability today to move some of these objects.
No, I wonder, with the ancient machine cutting. I mean, this is one of the things that, again, the new Not Aliens Beyond History is coming out in it's going to make Christmas for sure, folks. But one of the things that I'm hoping to do after this project's done, and there's going to be a lot of, I would say, totally worth it. It's coming out, but I really want to do something where we really have a list of, okay, well, there's all these machine cuts in all these impossible to cut stones, and you're seeing revolutions and clear indicators of ancient machining that exceed the speeds. Christopher Dunn went over this not only in the Giza power plant, but further. And then there's been other studies and the poor British shows that have tried to debunk or make it seem like there was a primitive way to do all these core samples that are throughout Egypt. It's just, or they're in
Or
Peru.
go
They're all,
India. Some of the
yeah,
structures that are
yeah,
in India that they know are minimum 10,000 or more years old.
yeah,
And there's stuff they've done on extremely hard rock that's gone in. One of them, you go through a small door and you go into this huge open, cavernous. I mean, it would be like a warehouse, but it's huge, and it was
yeah,
chiseled out of a solid chunk. It was actually a giant boulder. It wouldn't be like Uluru or Ayers Rock, but it's the
yeah.
similar ties. The big one, a very very large boulder all by itself, and they were able to go in and cut smooth surfaces uh, in a huge area with a perfectly flat floor, and it's just amazing.
Some of those Indian ones, I have a friend who travels there quite a bit, and since we got on this on her radar for ancient megalithic uh, constructions, I know Praveen. There's a channel on YouTube. He does a great job with going to all the ancient megalithic sites in India, but it's unbelievable how ancient that area of the earth is, and a lot of people don't know this, but now dynastic peoples like the Egyptians, what a lot of people don't know is the there's a population in India existing pre and around the Egyptians time frame that was significantly larger than the Egyptians as we knew them. They were rebuilding and using, whatever they found in the catastrophe of Egypt. To your point, like the Sphinx is being proven to be tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years old. Um, all of that aside, you have an existing known. Again, there's this east and west barrier to our narratives, and so
Mhm.
we never speak of it. But you have an existing pre-dynastic and dynastic population that's running plumbing, sewer pipes. They're doing it contemporary to the Egyptians and before, but there's these giant megalithic abandoned constructions that absolutely are similar in construction to everything found all over the earth. And this is, of course, only what's above water, but they're all examples of technologies that are not part of a primitive dynastic peoples. There's something they found or they adapted or they uh, ran into it. And then, like only my own voice, it's, uh, I think that there is rediscoveries like Tesla's, you have new downloads, you have where you and I are waking up, and there is still this connection to that collective human consciousness. And I think we get hunches, we chase down personal experimentations, and I think Tesla was a great example of that. There's just he's someone in modern times that I think was rediscovering technologies that to cut those giant stones to deal with them. I think some of those single cut temples you're talking about in India, something
Mhm.
else about them, it didn't hit me until you said that this time. But one of the things I've talked about is ancient 3D printing or ancient nanotechnology. For all we know, can you imagine carving something like that out of a single stone and maybe bragging rights back 100,000 years ago when you have all the most advanced technology and a third eye and 100% consciousness? Maybe the bragging rights was like you're an ancient Michelangelo and you did that whole building. But what if in the process of doing it, you broke like one nose off of a statue? Like the whole thing's perfect and you break one little thing. I wonder, it's like, well, you just made a giant, Grand Canyon size monument and it's all carved room. It's all out of single stone. You broke a piece. I wonder if instead of using epoxies or cement glues, if they actually did do more of a some sort of nano fix. I wonder if there are actual breaks, fractures, or miscuts that it was. I mean, it's mind blowing if they did it and they didn't make a single mistake. But I think it'd be just as mind blowing to think that they fixed mistakes that we can't tell that they made. I
Yeah.
don't think anyone talks about that.
Yeah. No, I just the ancient technology that's out there, that's what just intrigues the heck out of me. I mean, I'm seeing more and more of it. As, as I look into it, primarily because of our friendship, and it's just it's really intriguing. I mean, how in the heck did they do some of the things they did 10,000, 20,000, or 100,000 years ago? And we don't have the capability today to machine stone, hard rock, the way they did, where they just fit together like it's there's a Japanese, I think it's Japanese, maybe Chinese. It's a metal block, and it's three-dimensional, and you put it together, and all of a sudden you can't see the seams. You can't tell how that thing goes together, but it's multiple pieces. And if you know where to pull, you can pull the thing apart. I mean, it's like the games you used to get back as a kid, where you have a ball and it's in something, and you have to get it somehow. You have to get it out, or you have to be able to do something.
Yeah.
That type. How in the heck did they pull that off? I mean, it's just when we don't have the ability today to replicate what they did just at Machu Picchu. How in the heck did they do what they did?
Well, and the precision of the cut. So, we talk about the SR-71 Blackbird and the slide rule calculations to build something in 36 months. First off, academics, standard mainstream academia, they're not entirely to be blamed, but hubris is. And really, we need to, this is everyone's problem. This is everyone's right. This is everyone's questions. This is our history. It's not to remain in the hands of a small group of people, but they could have asked that question that you're asking. And actually, there should be a body to the moon of paperwork, of experiments, of actual replications to attempt to create any of these structures, any of the patterns. And it's not only the implements to do the actual stoning or the geopolymers that have been found, which Dr. Joseph Davidovitz has proven exist. There are ancient geopolymers, and other ancient materials groups have found that, and then we're not just talking Roman concrete, we're talking truly, truly ancient, very advanced concretes like Teflon quality. And they're again, it's like engineered soils are being found all over the earth. But there is no time now in over 100 years has any standard academia gone about a testing or there should be significant test fails, and there are almost literally zero. I think that speaks to something that they haven't even tried. But then at the same time, I'm optimistic where, when Lockheed can be given a contract in 36 months, produce what is still one of the fastest planes ever created, by bringing it to everyone who's listening and watching, it's our questions, it's our problem to collectively figure out what were the technologies, what were the machines, what was cutting these things, and not only that, but measuring those polygonal blocks. They made a different polygonal block system depending on where your building was, and 1,000 miles underground and to the right another 500 miles. Like, how is that city or that individual building being hit by a particular earthquake, or God knows what kind of advanced weapons? But they're cutting in uniquely every single block, and not to mention who knows what the foundations look like, which is one of the things that we're going for in South America, is to find out what kind of instrumentation is this society using that they could accurately build to mute any effects of earthquakes from underground, let alone what are they pointing to in the sky? What are they doing in those machines that do 0-point turns, like in these UFOs that we're like, that's a cool ability. But again, relationally to these stone block technologies and ancient machine marks, to what we're seeing in the night sky, it's not. I just don't think it's unrelated.
Well, how about, and then we have Stargates.
Yeah.
I mean, the movie that Kurt Russell was in, which was the first Stargate movie, that could be very. I mean, that they could be doing that right now.
Yeah.
We don't. There may be portals. Maybe some of the craft that we're seeing coming in and scaring the daylights out of people or fascinating the hell out of people, and we want to go out there and find out, what's what is what.
Yeah. There isn't. I think the grossest assumption we can make with all the clues that are in our own soil and literally in us. I mean, we're not as conscious as we used to be. We each know individually, I think, that we're capable of a lot more than what we even know of personally. I think actually being able to manifest. But then there's this outside of written, there's this physical history, not only in living things, but extinct and otherwise what we think of as out of place, out of time artifacts that show that there is something that was way more advanced. Not like they winged it and got buildings really square. Square's something neat, but when you have something like the Great Pyramid that is essentially 1/60th of a minute off of perfect north by north by south by south, and we have no buildings anywhere, including Area 51, that have any construction to that precision. And that's just one example. And it's such a cliche because there's many, many more megalithic constructions that have and locations. So geometrically, the relationship between one, what's now a sacred site, to another, what they really are is a bunch of ancient sites that are part of an advanced society that was using isosceles triangles and pi, and they're also distancing them for some other purpose than what we're primitively saying are tombs and worship centers. And they were aligned with the star system. If I hear that one more time, I sometimes just want it's not that there aren't star systems that coincidentally and or maybe intentionally in dynastic periods line up with things that look like lions and tigers and bears. It's just that I don't think the ancients that were advanced were building on whether or not it lined up with Orion. That this wasn't there's other star systems, as you just pointed out, in that little like graham cracker size photograph of exoplanets. The reality is that we're primitively even still looking at the night sky going, well, yeah, they only use the stuff you could see with your average eye. Yeah, if you're a Bang and Rock monkey living in a loincloth, but not a very advanced frequency-oriented society that might be looking two universes away, a dimension away. What they're, if it was about symbology, all right, I am digressing. I will shut up because when it comes to symbology, it's not that there isn't symbology and there's not meaning in it. I think we have to dismiss. That's what I'm frustrated with. There's so much obvious technology in our own history that we're ignoring, and we're not coming up with the solutions as to how they do it. We're not even the standard academics are not even asking the questions. They've had a chance, but there are too many of these technologies screaming back at us an abilities and a systematic use that doesn't defy any explanation. It requires that we are honest with what we're looking at and including that in an observation when we see something currently. Mm-hmm. I just think we're too we get too poetic and romantic about some of our it's got to be aliens and it's got to be from another dimension, and how could it not be? Well, yeah, there's a statistical chance of that, except you have to ignore all the physical evidence, including your own genetics, to say, well, wait, looks like a remnant human race is still calling this place home, and we might be the dumb monkeys swinging from the trees. Maybe there's whatever those answers are. That's the thing. That's just, I'm not going to be thrilled, Jim, whenever if we figure this out, they're like, yeah, well, we just ultimately, I mean, seems like an obvious answer. We just thought you guys were too stupid to really talk to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
Even if it's true.
Yeah.
It's like, they basically look at us like we're not teachable or like, well, you guys were in safe mode and you're basically in walking comas at 15% conscious.
There was a thing, and I can't recall where I saw it or where I read it, because I read for hours in the morning just news and stuff from all over the planet. But there's some speculation now that Mars may have been involved in a nuclear war. There's some indications. Yeah. There's some indications that that's what caused the atmosphere to leave, and that's what caused the planet of Mars to be pretty much a empty void, at least on the surface.
I think you're right. Richard Hoagland's been on that one for years. There's a huge, and I wish I could remember the name of it. A friend brought up, someone wrote a book about the human eye, and the human eye would not do what it does, or basically this author, and I apologize to everyone because I've brought this up before and I still haven't figured out who the book is, Fry, but it's all about the human eye should have evolved or was programmed or created in the environments of Mars when it did have an atmosphere. That, what if we dealt with prior to, we're doing, sorry about that, folks.
What if we're kicked out again?
Would that not be hilarious? Somebody just got, anyway, that was odd. Anyway, so I think it would just be fascinating to, discover that we're not from Earth. What if we are the exoplanet? What if we were part two? What if we did start on Mars, and in reality, space archaeology is really going to bring us to the conclusion that there is, I know everyone, as well as I do, and I think people need to hear this. Everyone who thinks that there's an actual live feed of Mars has to be insanely high. There's no way that we're getting raw images from Mars simultaneously as NASA or any private secret government organization that would be on Mars, right?
Right.
I don't know. It's just fascinating to me. It's never in the vernacular. No one ever talks about this. They're like, did you see the live feed? No, you didn't see a live feed. No one, who needs to see, family of grays or a human being waving at you or waving into the camera of the rover just to moon us? Yeah, right. That.
Yeah.
And what there's no way we're getting a live feed. So granted, even if it's like a pyramid or some sort of structure on Mars, and we are, Mary Joyce, there's definitely, I feel like we get some images that they're like, okay, they're either messing with us or they're like, okay, well, here's some tidbits, but with no explanation. I'm not saying that those aren't live or were live shots from Mars, but for the most part, we don't have a good story yet as to, I think, our own existence in the solar system. I think it's more complex, for sure. I think we're going to find out that some of these rocks or asteroids are more advanced satellite systems.
Was it within the last 2 years, maybe even longer? It's amazing how things get compressed when you're locked up. But there was an object, a very large object, that was coming into our solar system, heading towards Earth, and then it veered away. And there was, I think it was it was a long shaft-like object. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of miles long. That was actually being tracked, but then it decided to leave our solar system.
Yeah, and there's that behavior. It's like, well, again, if we had very deep ancient, so in ancient times we launched satellites, and just like the Hubble, it only has such a distance to photograph. If you had a larger and larger orbit that was more solar in orbit, you would have an opportunity to see and photograph things further and further away, and or get probing through infrared and other various waves. There are ways to radio photograph, and so yeah, there is definitely an opportunity, I think, for an ancient society to have created a more deep orbited satellite system.
Well, I mean, the James Webb Space Telescope will come in handy, and it was supposed to have first light this year, but COVID set it back at least 3 years, and that's the giant Magellan telescope they're putting together in Chile.
Yep.
That uses 7 27-foot diameter primary mirrors to focus on one secondary mirror, and they said they will be able to look back within 100,000 years of first light.
That'll be incredible. It'll be a great. It's going to be a great. I think around the corner we have an evolution coming. There's a lot more people waking up, like our audience, and at this point too, due to the background shenanigans going on, I don't want to cut us off, but it looks like we should wrap. And before we do, we need to talk about your newest book that came out. We should probably tell everybody about finding that. And with Thanksgiving next week, I don't know what we're going to do to be on, but we should sort out about your new book.
Oh, we can do that.
First,
my newest book came out in June of last year, and it's 384 pages. It's called 75 Years of the Lockheed Skunk Works. And I cover 43 programs, and there's probably 43 I know nothing about. But I cover it from 1943 all the way through present day. And everything that's not classified. Now there are 2 programs in there that are still highly classified that I talk about. Actually 3. They asked me not to put pictures up on 2 of them, because if I did, I couldn't have my book couldn't Lockheed. And since I'm gearing it towards anybody who loves Lockheed, and hopefully a couple of thousand of the Lockheed Skunk Works people would want to have my 75 years book. And then I have probably my favorite book is my Blackbird book by Schratt Publishing, and that's 160 pages covering all 50 of the manned Blackbirds. I cover each and every one of them. I have probably about half the photos have never been in print, and the same with my 75 years in the Lockheed Skunk Works. And also from Schratt Publishing, I have my B-2 pictorial history, and I cover everything from the first flying wings that Jack Northrop was playing with, to the XB-35, to the YB-49, to today's B-2 stealth bomber. And the one thing I'm most proud of in the book, in the front of it, it has a little certificate saying that one Master Sergeant James C. Goodall has flown the B-2 simulator, and I'm the only one in my neighborhood to have done that. And that tickles me. So, and I should have I'll figure out how to put a list up of what my books are on our next
we
broadcast.
need to do that. We need to link those. That's for sure.
Yeah, and it's just I absolutely love what I'm doing. I really do, and I'm looking forward to our trip to Peru this spring. It's going to be fun. And it could, because of what we're planning to do, if it pans out, if it proves to be worthwhile, this could be the equivalent of finding the Rosetta Stones as it produced ancient civilizations.
I love your analogy on that, and I appreciate it. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And then next week with Thanksgiving for everyone, we're gonna have to sort out. We could actually do a side by side. We could actually we'll be in person. We could do something together in the in the Blackbird office.
That's possible.
So I want to thank everyone for joining us.
Yes, I thank you too.
Yeah. Well, let's check out, and let me give you a call after I find out what the big mystery is with my new office still not being secure.
I mean, that's someone you don't know was trying to get into your.
That just happened twice in the last 10 minutes, and that's what that phone call was. So I have no idea what kind of tomfoolery or shenanigans is going on, but that's exactly what happened. Somebody opened up my space and looked right at me. That should not have had a key.
That would make me nervous. Yep.
Yep. So I'm curious about that also. But I don't know what else to say to everyone except thanks, Aaron's energy, and only my own voice, and everyone else that's been in the chat, and the 9 of you that are still remaining till the very last ends. Barry, and yeah, thanks everyone. Even if I haven't mentioned your name, or if you haven't posted anything, join us next week. We'll get I'll work out a date with Jim, and we'll do this sooner. And stay tuned. We're sooner than later for a release for my new book. So
that sounds everyone. Good. And my 29th book is it's called Nautilus to Columbia Class, the United States Navy's fleet of nuclear-powered submarines. There's 227 of them, and I covered them all. I give a brief history of each one. I have specifications for them. And at least 3 photos. Some have a lot more of those submarines. And it's just, when I started the project, I never in my wildest dreams figured that we have built almost 230 nuclear powered submarines since 1954.
That we know of.
I'm pretty sure I have most of them.
No, I think it's pretty amazing what we've accomplished in modern times. It's wild. That's one more thing we got to post. Yep.
Everybody, if we don't connect with you a week from today, I hope everybody has a wonderful Thanksgiving. Don't eat too much, but screw it.
Yeah, just do it.
Make a pig of yourself. I mean, who knows what next Thanksgiving is going to be like?
Right. So everybody enjoy the holiday. We'll post when we can about the next show.
And you all take care, and you have a good evening. And I will chat with you offline.
Yep.
Okay.
I will talk to you in a minute.